with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker today, Matt Curry. So Matt Curry is going to be presenting on ESG's New World. He has worked exclusively in oil and gas for his professional career. He's a native Western Pennsylvanian. He's been one of the first movers and shakers on the Barnett and Marcellus Shales. So he's a chemical engineering graduate from Penn State. Started out his career working for Mitchell Energy down in Fort Worth. Moved back to Pittsburgh in 2008, joining Range Resources. He established his Range Marcellus development teams and later Range's NGL business development, overseeing the first domestic and international ethane sales from the region, the first oil condensate exported via the U.S. East Coast, and the first producer to market their propane from the Appalachian basin globally by virtue of the Mariner East pipeline and the Marcus Hook terminal. Within the last year, Matt has co-founded an emerging company, Green Zone Technologies, to provide clean, stable electric power. He also received an MBA from Southern Methodist University, forgot to say that. He completed petroleum engineering courses at the University of Tulsa, as well as the Executive Leadership Development Program at Stanford University. So he resides in Peters with his wife, 3 children, and 2 dogs, and several fish, which may or may not be the same fish. You'll have to tell the story on that one. Purchased initially. So please join me in welcoming Matt to the stage here.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't think so. I think everybody will be able to hear me. I think. Do I need the microphone back there? No? Should I use the microphone so I'm not screaming at you up here? So, hey, thanks. Thanks for inviting me here. This is a treat because you're not behind a screen and I can wear pants for the first time in forever. And so it's like, hey, we'd like you guys to come out and talk about, stuff. What are you going to talk about? And I'm like, this is a tremendous opportunity just to interface with people. I don't know, I'll get back to you. And so Green Zone, this is not a commercial for my company, but we're all about ESG. Like, we fully believe it. And you're going to see trends of me and the company through it. But my gosh, Bitcoin is such that zeitgeist, and it's everywhere, and it's gaining steam, and it's bigger. And I knew jack about it until like 2 months ago. So I got a little bit of a disclaimer that I might be incoherent at times around the Bitcoin thing, but I promise you that I'll take up all my allotted time, so no problem there. The Bitcoin deal, just to talk about it one more time, it's so darn interesting, and it's something that just blossomed, and like, I've got to try to figure this out. So I did what many of you have done, and I got myself a case of COVID over Christmas, and so I just sat behind my computer and figured out, like, all right, what YouTube talking head can tell me about this? Went down a rabbit hole, and then figured out, like, it kind of doesn't matter what you believe about it basically or where it's going. It's the fact that it's just here and just how big it is. All right, so slight disclaimer there. We'll talk a little bit about this new world of ESG, and also just a glimpse of the world of natural gas. I realize I'm talking to people who are in midstream and pipeline. I myself am from a operations background. You may have to translate some of what I'm saying to make the leap, but I got to enter into your world a little bit. You got to come over with me and mine. All right, so first, let's take a quick look at natural gas and electricity. So makes sense, ESG, Bitcoin together, right? So right here from the EIA. And let's just look at the things that are evident right off the bat. You see the gold natural gas line over on the other side over there. There we go. Oh, nope. Anyway, over there, kind of trending down. Coal to renewables, that green line coming up. Again, you have to pull yourself back and you're like, okay, I've said this about renewables or that. I'm in the natural gas industry. I really should be a proponent of that. But let's see what's really happening in the world, and that's a pretty positive slope on the renewables. Natural gas coming down. Every time I see a line that says forecast, though, how do they know they're right? If you flip to another page or another screen on this same EIA website, right now they say WTI is at like $76 and not where it is today, okay? So are they getting it right? And then I take a look at the forecast line with how much energy is being used, and I'm seeing a little bit of an uptick, kind of flattish, and I realize we're talking about a huge amount of electricity, but is that even right? We're getting into the Internet of Things. I can talk to my Christmas tree and have it turn on. It's not, my kid doesn't do it. They don't even pick up their own socks. So there are so many things that are using power these days. When's the last time you saw a internal combustion engine car commercial? Maybe I'm just not watching the right things, but it's all the next things that plug in and things that use electricity. So is this right? I don't know, but I do know that the renewables, there's an issue with those things. As they are put onto the grid, there's a fight there with some synthetic inertia, or some inertia, I mean, from the grid itself, and it's really the shock absorber that is provided by spinning things. And I don't mean the windmills, I mean the big, large turbines in the coal plants and hydroelectric and gas-fired power plants. And so whenever you get an inverter type of electricity onto the grid, those things have to fight a little bit. And so, you know, where are we going with that? We all know that the sun doesn't shine, and we've all heard, you know, all the time, and then wind and whatever. And so you are going to need some sort of stability there. Batteries play into the mix and whatever. But, you know, there could be a trend in natural gas. I just don't think you follow that thing to zero. All right, so what about new demand? What about how is electricity delivered? And what is the fastest way to ramp up? What are we going to do in these next couple of years? Like, what is our vision going forward? We've heard Toby Rice, as of late, get on the news channels and say, man, unleash natural gas. We've got climate change concerns. We have all this stuff. We couldn't agree with him more, right? But we also have the advance of renewables. So it's how is this administration really doing a balancing act and bringing everything together? And they're kind of not. Right? Just in December, the White House released an executive order that says 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2030. That's in 8 years, and that's quick, right? How do you accomplish that? So is that a virtue signal? Yeah, probably. Is that achievable? No. But does it make people get into more renewables and whatever? Yeah, sure it does. Does it make people look for other ways to do things? Yeah, sure it does. And the message there is how it's still the green agenda. It's the bulldozer coming at us. You're not going to be able to push back against it. It's going that way. So really, the talk today with ESG and Bitcoin is, how can you profit by it? How can you make all that stuff work for you? And so a lot of this is opinion, right? Maybe I say some stuff we all agree with, but there are things that I think I see, and just what we can point to here today, and maybe a trend. All right, so that thing comes out, and then this is dated yesterday. So yesterday, there's three main grid operators in the U.S. You got East, West, and you got ERCOT down in Texas. East, the biggest of them all, says, holy cow, time out. We cannot process all these solar panels wanting to connect to us. Like, it's not just a little bit, it's not a 30-second timeout and let's figure out what we're going to do before the 2-minute warning and stop the clock again. This is, I need 2 years to figure this out. So that 2030 thing, it's a little bit more, pushed out some more again. But it's all about, it's not just, hey, we have some electrons, throw them together with the rest of the electrons and let's be happy about what we're doing. A little bit more complex than that. The transmission lines are built in a certain way. They're connected in a certain way. There's different pockets and islands of things. In Texas, that freeze out that happened where, gosh, it was colder than it was here by far. That was the big news, and electric power outages all over the state. Something that was kind of underreported was when these islands of grid electricity started coming up, you'd get one sector up to full strength, and the one next to it would just be, and would come up and kind of knock this one off. And so they had trouble. So just with that in a deregulated market and like people sort of working together to do things, it's complex. So that the amount of renewables hitting the grid is something to be contended with. Are they going to get there? Yeah, I think so eventually. But it's, okay, what about the here and now? And so what about this ESG? ESG is now a teenager. we started talking about ESG mostly, at least in my world, a couple of years ago, and it was a bunch of BS back then, and what do they know, and this is all posturing, and now you're like, whew, it's been here a while. And so I made these slides kind of wordy a little bit because I didn't know if the COVID bug was going to bite a lot of people or who typically was here. So stuff for some people to read, but I'm not going to read directly from them. So in 2005, ESG, the term was coined in a report called Who Cares Wins. And that was really started by Kofi Annan in 2004. And it was a pretty shrewd move by the guy. He's like, how do I convince people to look at climate a bit better and make it a part of their lives? I'll connect their money to it. That's what I'll do. And so he reached out to 50 CEOs, at the start, and said, hey, let's do this green thing. And then you get green things, and then money goes in. And so you've got investors out there looking at two different things. And one is, hey, I'm investing my money, and that is an observable profit loss, type of thing. Or I'm investing my money, and I have the feel-good aspect too, right? And so that all winds together. You can see the way that this immediately proliferated into the NYSE in 2006 and 2007, and now today over 1,600 global members representing over $70 trillion in assets under management. Incredible. All right, and that's just 17 years ago. All right, so let's take a look at how it's doing today. So BlackRock was polled in 2020, everybody locked in their houses, and they, in the middle of 2020, they went out and their respondents that had an estimated $25 trillion in assets said, hey, yeah, we've got like 18% of that stuff is kind of greenish, and within a few years, we're gonna double that. We're gonna bring it up to 37. And this is just in 2020. 88% of all those guys said that global or climate change and the environment was absolutely number one on their minds. Okay, so ESG, evidence of it right there in BlackRock. And then Morningstar last year, 400 climate-aware funds in 2020. So we looked at BlackRock in 2020. 2021 saw that, boom, that hockey stick uptick. Now 636 climate funds globally. All right, so I know I'm telling you everything that you already know. ESG has been around for a while, and it's here to stay. All your companies, public and private, whatever, are trying to do what they can to move with this investment cycle. All right, $649 billion poured into ESG-focused funds, and it was up from 500 some, and then it was up from 200 some. So you can see that hockey sticking up. That Blackstone report, if I were to use Google a lot better than I did, they probably undershot that number is my guess. And so it continues to walk up. And now ESG funds account for 10% of all worldwide fund assets. 10 sounds small until you think worldwide, like that is substantial. Public companies, you read their prospectus, you go through their corporate presentations, and they talk about how green we are. Each company, hey, we're green. And that's really the investor focus. Please invest your dollars in us. Look how responsible we are. Even the private companies, I talked to a CEO of or COO of a private producer up here a few weeks ago, and I said, man, I just want to understand why go green? Like, why? And he said, you forget. He said, we may not have people who can find us and click on us and buy our stock, but we've got private equity behind us. And these private equity guys got to get their money from somewhere. And you're looking at all of these funds in New York and San Francisco that are going green. I repeat myself there. In Canada and Ontario Teachers Fund and all over. They need to also show that they have green investments that are available for money to pour in upon, right? You can't be lagging behind. All right, so ESG, is it a good idea? Like, what should we really be doing? And if the answer is, yeah, I'm gonna get more corporate investment in, and it's gonna come in over the top, and our stock's gonna go up, and What's that translate to things I can do? Hey, that's all great, but can I get it to work for me today? Like, how is that? And so real down here, if you can't see in the back, it says, yes, I already gave the answer. So ESG, I think, is a great idea for shale operations. And again, I know I'm talking to pipeliners, but you got stuff that moves. You have stuff that needs power. You have a situation years ago that you've moved from and to in order to project an ESG or a greener style operation. And if you haven't, you're dealing with companies who are, and that you're gonna have to kind of blend into what they're doing too. Right? So it's a given. You're going to improve your emissions for whatever you're doing to create a better investment atmosphere. But above and beyond that, how can you make ESG work for you today? It is through that electrification. It's making a platform for automation by virtue of electrification. And then if y'all say, sorry, I was in Texas. If you say that safety is your #1 priority, it's not really safety, right? It's people. We can talk about safety all we want, but when you personify it, what are you doing for that person in the field? Are you having them around in harm's way, or do you get their work to remove them from the situation, to do different things, and to put them in a better atmosphere? So if safety is about the people, then this is also an excellent way to transfer that work to literally a different spot. So electrification has happened in many industries. You see steel, you see glass plants. So I've made some relationships with getting into the whole ESG thing and electric motors and just automation, all this stuff, and really learning about what has happened. Pittsburgh in and of itself is like every electrical milestone that has happened within like 100, 150 miles of Pittsburgh. I don't know what's so magical about the area, but it has. But like a glass plant, which is not something I would think of ever, but glass plants, when they are put into production, they are meant to operate continuously for 12 years. Like, don't stop. Like, that's their thing. And they have become so efficient at what they do. Steel itself, right? We know from history books, we know from old movies the way steel used to be, and yeah, if steel were still around, but I mean, we know how that has become automated and pulling people back from harm's way. There's some fellows I took for a field tour, took them around, and they were like, thank you for the time capsule. This is incredible. Some of the operations, field operations, the black smoke, the noise, the people scattered everywhere, they're like, this is an incredible thing. Like how oil and gas, especially in operations, has sat back so far is incredible. And where they're going, there's a lot of room to run. All right, so running through a bit of this, natural gas fueled electrification naturally leads into some cost reductions. You get rid of some of the old internal combustion, 500 moving parts sort of things, and you are now avoiding this inflationary atmosphere. I don't know if you've realized what the kind of economy we have right now, but also the wearable parts to attach, to fix old technology, and how hard those might be becoming to get just right now. Possibly a kind of a blurb here in this timeline, but old technology usually is not supported for very long unless you've got some sort of, 1960-something Corvette or whatever. You can still find parts for it, but you can't really go down to your shop and get them. So it's all about ushering in that new way. Reliability. So with electrification and automation comes that reliability. Look at the glass plant I talked about. All right, and in every single one of these large industries, you have some degree or measure of automation, and therefore the automation is enabled by the reliability, or else you just never would have it. And safety, again, you remove people from harm's way. You have less maintenance with a more reliable product. You have less operators, where the business is getting done, you're back away from it. And so ESG works for you not only in that sort of cost reduction just on material goods and how things operate, but really, I got an insurance guy right here, I'll have to ask him about what that actually means to the people on location and what that means to overhead costs and what happens if they're actually sitting behind something, rather than wielding a 24-inch crescent wrench. Data and analytics can uncover other things. When you electrify, you don't now have pockets of all kinds of things going on. You can have centralization. If you have a system that's interconnected, you can pull data the way you never have before, and then you can analyze that data. Through automation is not just technical, functional in-motion automation, automated reports, something that would have 15 people put together that you're going to review once a month, and by the time you get it, it's already out of date and you need to do it again. There's so much more that can be done along that lines. And then forward on, once you electrify, now you have a platform for further technological development. You've got something that can power other things. You can entice people to move into it. You can entice your service companies, your neighbors to be safer as well, and invite in that cost reduction. And gateway to new efficiencies. So do I have any producers in this room at all? Okay, good, I'm gonna talk about them. All right, so you get on any single one of their corporate reports. And it's not just them, it's other people too. But I mean, you look at what it costs to develop a Marcellus well or a Utica well, and you will see this downward tick in costs, and it's always due to our efficiencies every single time. Look how smart we are. Look, it's going down. There's two aberrations in that. If you go back and you draw a trend line, one was well-deserved. The other one, I'm gonna call you out on it. The first one was everything riding high, 2012, 2013, 2014, Brent at 110 bucks a barrel. We're getting to those prices now, by the way. Gas riding high, and then that crashed, 2015, 2016, everything just sort of sliced down to nothing. Gas goes below $2, Brent goes down below 40, and then we're in that, now what are we gonna do? So operators are, they're notorious for being price reactive. Price went down, let's stop. Price went up, let's go. Price goes up, all right, let's drill more wells. Well, on a timeline, you're starting here, you think the price, you're gonna march out 9 months later and hit this price, but the price is right where you are. I don't know what it's gonna be over here, but hey, it's the nature of the beast. It's kind of what they do. So price falls, they stop. There's a lot of people thinking, I need to keep my damn job. What am I gonna do? So they did something that you can't do whenever you're racing to make money, and you think. And I would like to propose to everybody here that is one lost art in industry that really, really advances you. It's taking time to think about what you are doing and why you are doing it. So these guys thought, now, they did have massive impact on efficiencies in a good way coming out of that when they started getting busy again. And the year was 2018. And that was the year I started a horsepower company because horsepower was scarce, the day rates were high. I was going to be so rich that I was going to not be able to be even contacted to talk to people in a room on February 8th, 2022. And that didn't work at all. In fact, right in we weren't even walking yet. I had got horsepower. I have 2 patents pending on a certain turbine-driven pump. It is fabulous. It's still a concept today, but the idea was, I'm gonna get frac pumps, I'm gonna create cash flow, free cash flow, and I'm gonna use that to develop this other thing, which we nicknamed the flux capacitor because it was so damn cool. And then it's gonna go, and it never happened. The forecast I have, to do the last part first, I had a basement forecast and the market crashed through there. And so I was on borrowed time for a long time, but these guys sat, and especially the producers, figured out how to drill wells better, how to frack wells better, because that's the world I was living in. The frackers, I was sitting down with a gentleman by the name of Adam who works at EQT, and I was having coffee with him, And we were talking about like, hey, once I get these pumps, maybe you're going to use them. And he said, yeah, about that. We're going from 11 frac crews down to 8, and then maybe down to 6. I'm like, you're doing like a 30% reduction and then like in half? How'd you screw up? You ran through your budget. What did you do? And he said, we just got that much better. Like we figured out that what it used to take us 11 frac crews to do, we can now do with 8, and we think we can get there with 6. And by God, they did it. And they made me obsolete immediately before I even got a chance to get up and running. So I never actually operated up here. I ran down to the Eagle Ford and just bought time until I died. And which gave birth to Green Zone. It was a good death. It was a very nice death. So these guys did get efficient. Okay, so that's the first one. They got efficient. They figured stuff out, and I truly believe that, 2018-ish. But then you get into 2020, and then you see all this stuff, and you guys all know. I see smiles already, like, you didn't figure out much like right away. Everybody was everything stopped. People were fighting to stay alive. They dropped their costs so much just so they could keep working and keep doing whatever. But it's that efficiency thing. So if all these service companies scuttled their revenue just to remain alive, it means they can't grow. They practically can't take care of what they got. Prices have got to come up. So what's that going to look like on your next slide topic there? Is that going to be like, oh, we suck, we got inefficient? So it'll be real interesting how they term that whenever they start with the quarterly numbers, looking at last year, and then seeing how things progress this year. But to build in true efficiencies, you got to change the nature of the game. And I think if you stay on, the diesel drug and whatever the old technology that we have, and you don't adopt electrification, I think you're missing a massive opportunity to change a cost structure to work for you. And then EQT, by the way, just last week said, yeah, we're about to participate in a hydrogen hub. And methane molecules got 4 of those hydrogen atoms on it, so I believe that they can. All right, so that's through my ESG part. Thanks for suffering with me through there. So as long as we have electricity, let's go ahead and stumble with me into the world of Bitcoin. I didn't create it. I will confess, I just started buying it like 2 weeks ago. I don't know enough about it. So I'd come along for the ride here. All right, so cryptocurrency. By the way, part of this presentation is going to involve Bitcoin mining. I didn't know what it took. I'm like, I don't know, like, what's the revenue? What are you looking at? Is it purely speculative? In many ways it is. There's some decent foundational stuff. There's some history, and there are, there's definitely some stakes in the ground with Bitcoin that I found compelling enough for me to pull $10 out of my checking account every Monday and buy Bitcoin. I'm gonna be swimming in it by the end of this thing. But these guys said, yeah, we'll get you some numbers, and it's just a rough look that you'll see. And they also gave me some trinkets. They're like, hey, do you think the people in that room would like to hold on to a gold coin or whatever? So I got a box of them over here that you can have. There's not that many. You can help yourself to 1 or 2. Don't take a fistful. And it's not real currency. Bitcoin doesn't look like that. In fact, it's on a computer, as we all know. So back in 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto, a pseudonym for, and I believe I'm talking to experts in the room who are going to correct me, and I'm going to talk to people who don't know anything about it, and you will know whether I'm lying to you or not. So Satoshi Nakamoto, a pseudonym for a person, a group of people, maybe the real name, I don't know, comes up with a 9-page paper of a peer-to-peer electronic cash system that pretty much removes banks, and 9 pages has had such an effect on the world. It's amazing. I wrote the least technical SPE paper ever. And I maybe reached out like 10 people or so, and who actually talked to me about it. This guy did something that's global with 9 pages. All right, so this fellow goes live with it in 2009. And it cuts out all middlemen, it cuts out service fees, it cuts out transaction fees, exchange fees. a Bitcoin hither and yon is worth the exact same no matter where you are. You don't have to go through like the exchange through another bank to get it to somebody. You can see how people in impoverished companies might really, really latch onto that, provided they can access the internet, computer system, their wealth, and whatever. But you can see everything in between. The blockchain, which I'll tell a little bit about, is the foundation of Bitcoin. And what that really is a distributed ledger to everywhere where Bitcoin has, at least mining terminals and whatever. It's stored on every computer has an exact copy of that blockchain. And it's subject to something called the Lindy effect. And if there's any back to school movie fans out there, non-millennials probably, you'll know the triple Lindy, but this is different. It's when something's been around for a long time, it tends to stay around longer. You can think of it as like a Broadway play, like Cats was there for forever, it's gonna keep going. Let alone something that's been out there for a year. There's some question whether it'll make it to year 2 or not. So Bitcoin has been through multiple hacking, attempts and came out unscathed. Bitcoin has been declared dead, I read in something, more than 400 times. All not true, obviously. And so it's like the thing that is here to stay. And it's a bit different from the other currencies out there. Talking about just regular currency, gold, Bitcoin itself in the middle, and then fiat money like dollars on the end, or rupees, or yen, or whatever. You can see sort of like where did this thing have, where's the pluses and where's the minuses for it? And this came from a Fidelity report, not like I came up with this on my own, came up just last month. And so they were talking about like, hey guys, man, maybe everybody should take time out and really think about this thing. And so you can see gold, yes, it's durable. You can't easily fraction it and sort of portion it out. You can with fiat money, you can with Bitcoin. The only thing Bitcoin's really lacking in this thing is a track record. And, portability of gold, of course, bad, pretty heavy. Fiat money, you got some in your pocket. The track record, man, I'd argue that minus might change to a plus if things continue the way they're going. My crystal ball is pretty darn funny whenever it comes to investing and whatever, but this thing's got some staying power. So how does Bitcoin even come about? So the energy use, and if you've read about natural gas turned into electricity, for Bitcoin mining, or you've heard about some of these old power plants reopening just for miners, or you've heard about especially where you can negotiate directly with the electric provider in Texas and get some ridiculous like 2-cent rates, you'll hear about it all connected to Bitcoin miners. Sophisticated computer equipment meant to really do one thing, and that's look for the next Bitcoin. Back in Satoshi's paper, he posited that there were only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be mined. Other and most if not all other cryptocurrencies other than Ethereum, they can. It's almost like sky's the limit. So you have to worry about inflation, like U.S. printing money over and over again. Bitcoin's got an endpoint, like pew, that's it, and there's no more. So now you have 21 million, but a scarce commodity, which is seen to have a store of value. So all these miners are solving problems. They're solving algorithms, and they're finding what's called that last hash. And that hash is not corned beef, which is delicious, but it is a computer code that it is very unique and identifiable to the block that they find. That block that miner pretty much completes that block, and they get a reward. Is this the slide? Yeah, so the reward for a mining block used to be, you complete a block, you get 50 Bitcoins. And then it was in half to 25, and then 12 and a half, and now we're 6 1/4. And it will keep doing that because as more people get into the system, there's a lot more computer power. And the way Satoshi laid this out was every 10 minutes, right? There's going to be, we're going to it's sort of going to have that own little delay where the last coin is minted, or mined, not minted, mined in 2140. So these coins are literally found. They're solving complex problems to find the coin. You find that coin, you get that last hash, 6.25 Bitcoins are yours. All right, so what is the blockchain? And again, I really feel like I'm talking like I'm an expert up here, and I'm not. And I got primary colors up here just to go show that. So the first block of the blockchain that Satoshi created is called the Genesis block. So the very first block, how apropos. And it has data in it. It's got its hash. And it has, other than the Genesis block, it has the hash of the previous block. So the first block is formed. It's got a unique identifier. When the second block is formed, it has its own unique identifier and the identifier of the block before it. So you can see how it forms a chain. Each block does not stand on its own. It's linked to the block behind it, which is linked to the block behind that, which is linked to the block behind that. And so this thing, linearly, how far this stretches out, I don't know. We're up to well over 18 million Bitcoins mined. So you can imagine the complexity of this system and just what it has taken to create these things. These things are created, yes, it's the next slide, I wasn't sure. These things were created by what's called proof of work and not proof of stake. Most other cryptocurrencies are based in a proof of stake, not proof of work. Bitcoin, let me start with the other ones. Proof of stake is you've got some crypto cash, and you take some of your cash and you throw it out into a pool, and you hope you get picked to approve the next block that comes up. The idea there is kind of the honor system where you're going to use, you don't want to lose value in your coins, so you're not going to do anything bad because you can be penalized and fined, or you can help destroy the system that you're out to change, and then your value, you're strangling yourself, right? So it's sort of based on that, kind of Boy Scoutish, let's be all trustworthy here, but we're also going to make you put some skin in the game. Proof of work is different. Proof of work solves an algorithm, and then the Bitcoin mining community pretty much verifies that. And so it's a verification of the transaction. And so it goes back and it has a look like, does this all make sense? Yeah, everything links up. And you need 51% in either one really to confirm that that new block is good, whether you're proof of stake or proof of work. Now, proof of stake, I guess with a cryptocurrency that doesn't have too much momentum with it, you can sort of get with some other people and kind of manipulate. Proof of work, and the fact that Bitcoin is now as old as it is a little bit different. Look at this Bitcoin energy consumption. New York Times said last year, tell them I'm not available, by the way, if you answer that. 91 terawatt hours of electricity annually. Terawatt. I don't even know how much that is other than a lot. More annual electricity used in Finland or a city of over 5 million people. And so in that new updated reports, that was from last year, updated reports this year, 137 terawatts. People are just running at this thing. So that's a 50% increase, just on that. Now it takes roughly 13 years of a typical household electricity to mine a single Bitcoin. Is just from last September. 7 times more than Google's system.
This all sounds like you're trying to find a Pokemon, or you're in the game of Minecraft or something. I mean,
yeah.
Are we talking real stuff here?
Hey, I'm the expert, so yeah. No, yeah, so right, this is exactly that, right? It's like, how did it come about? It's a store of value, yeah, and you're finding stuff that you can't really see. And your computer's just telling you got it. And you have to trust the system. And then you're looking at this like, there's all kinds of things. If you want to go down the rabbit hole like I did, there's plenty of places to go. And by the way, I did watch a video with Tucker Carlson and Michael, somebody help me out with that, MicroStrategies guy? No? Saylor. Yeah, Michael Saylor. Tucker Carlson spoke a total of like 4.5 minutes. So this guy just talked. I'm like, oh, finally, at least I'm getting an idea. I'm sure he's very biased towards Bitcoin, but an incredible thing. And he poured billions of dollars into it. But just something to look at, some homework whenever you're not listening to ESG Bitcoin speeches on replay. All right, so this is where the other guys get in. You see the slide change a little bit and whatever. And so I reached out to these folks. They're going to give you a nice little trinket. And then they're like, hey, so what about the gas wellhead opportunity up here? I was having a couple of beers with a producer recently, a rather substantial one, who lamented, like, I got 20 million a day shut in. I'm like, people just not doing their jobs? Who are you going to fire first? And he's like, these are old wells. It's part of an old system. I can't get into the pressure. They're talking about a system that cannot buck 600 pounds of pressure. And it's not all together either, where you can think you can put like massive compression on it and make it go. It's all over the place, and like, it's not connected. I don't know what to do. And like, hold on to that thought. That very nice folks at AB GPA are going to make me look into some things. So, stranded gas, where is it? Uneconomic initial production, you drill a well, you drill a pad that sucks, and now you've got terrain that's like the worst part of West Virginia. How am I going to get through there? Oh crap, there's a river. You know, this will never pay for itself. That lower pressure system I just talked about. Maybe you have an acquisition of some wells that fell into, and you're like, well, these suck. What am I going to do with that? Or maybe your market economics. Something I learned whenever I shifted over to marketing for range was, if there's a good price somewhere, everybody rushes at it and just whack-a-moles that thing right down as soon as they can. So, are you now in a place where you're obviously landlocked? You only have a couple of market points. Maybe you got your economics looked great 5 years ago, but everybody's drilled around you in some really great wells, and now you're just pressured out. Your firm transportation sucks. Your gathering costs suck. Like, what are you going to do? Not these guys in the room. You structure your contracts a heck of a lot better than that. So now you've got a real opportunity to use that gas and maybe use it for something on site. Hey, some Bitcoin mining. But look how Bitcoin has grown. So this goes back to kind of your observation, like, we're finding a Pokemon. What am I going to do with a Pokemon? I don't know. I don't know what you do in your spare time, but anyway, but look, the first Bitcoin ATM was installed in San Diego in 2013. I didn't even know they had these things until they sent me this slide. And then, NASDAQ's going to use the technology. There are 5,000 Bitcoin ATMs 3 years ago. Bitcoin market cap hits $1 trillion. It's at 838 this morning, nearly $1 trillion today. 2021, it says countries start to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. The first one's El Salvador. You can walk into a coffee shop in El Salvador and you can buy yourself some Java on your phone. And there's got to be more I know there's more thinking about it. How it all comes to pass, I don't know. I'm sure some of your congressmen have it, so I'm not so sure that there's going to be onerous sort of taxing on this stuff. It's probably more opportunity. So who knows where it goes here, but you can see just a history of increasing value. If nothing else, that's an increasing value. All right, so what's the business opportunity for those who have wells or can tap into production or whatever? Other than outside of, Texas has probably the best scenario for it right now, but Appalachia does have high quality BTU. So if you're in a dry gas system, that's one thing. If you're in a wet gas system, you have a whole host of problems trying to get that gas to sales. You got to process that thing. What if you have a crappy well? I mean, it could make your economics even worse because now you've got to do transportation and fractionation. You have to figure out the rest of that. Maybe you have something on location that just, no matter the BTU, it just churns it right on site and turns it into usable electricity. So now with that timeline, where I want to do something here, 9 months later, hope the price is still there. This is kind of that same thing, only maybe you don't have to worry about the pipeline and the landowners and some right-of-ways. Might not sound so good. I just realized I'm talking to pipeliners again. I just took them out of the equation. I'll apologize after. But so gas well owners have some untapped reserves really kind of just sitting there. So running through this real quick, Bitcoin at today's cost, and you just look at some of the overhead numbers, and you take depreciation out over 5 years, you're saying, hey, you could still make $1 million. Last year it was at 68. If there's something, I should have put the curve up here, I don't have it, but if you look at the Bitcoin market curve, it rides in low, it starts to get popular, and then it goes up and it falls back down, and it goes up and it falls back down. But if you know something about those nodules, so far, they've all been higher than the one before it. So although there's a good fall, it doesn't fall as far as the one that had been before. Anything could change, can come back down, of course. But now you're looking into something where, hey, if it just gets back to where it was before, decent argument for it. Now you're up to about $7 million of net profit over 5 years, and at 100K, 14. Now, because I went down the rabbit hole and I was just reading everything, this was the hardest darn presentation to put together because there's so much information out there, and I tried to distill it to something that might be useful. I've read reports like, hey, it's going to be 200 this year. Again, go back to my EIA forecast. I don't know, but I do know that there's a lot of excitement behind it. And if you just look at the power itself, it looks like you've got so many more entrants. So just from that, I don't know how that doesn't have at least some validity to it, the argument that Bitcoin is going to keep rising. All right, other benefits are Bitcoin mining and such. When you see it in the field, some of it is set there. This can be completely mobile as well. It depends on how you set a system up. Maybe there's an opportunity even in your personal lives. Maybe smaller private companies that have issues. Maybe you can even be a personal investor on that side. Again, the whole topic of the speech really is like how to make this stuff work for you, whether it's at work or whether it's in your own life. I just don't see Bitcoin evaporating overnight. I just see it getting more and more popular. All right, so how big is Bitcoin? Look at that dominance. So you have a logarithmic scale on this side, on your left-hand side. You see that blue curve go up to about $1 trillion. And you've seen Bitcoin being the only thing for several years, and then some other ones got into the mix and started going down. So you see Bitcoin is still 50%. Some have failed, right? Bitcoin comes back up. Bitcoin, there's more of it. It does that sort of switch and play. With all the crypto out there, it still has quite a size. This was, I forget where I got this, maybe Yahoo, finance.yahoo. I clicked on something and it showed me this, and I did a screenshot, and I did it like 2 hours ago. So this is pretty fresh. So that's at $833 billion market cap of Bitcoin. And by the way, sir, I'm not picking on, I still don't quite get it, but I got $10 every Monday that says it's real. So, but you can see all these, as I shift over here, I'm not ignoring you guys. But I mean, I don't even know what's in here or what the names of these are. You've got the Steve Volas Bitcoin here. You've got, all these other things that coming down. And maybe this one was just invented today. I don't know. But you can see just how it stacks up. Ethereum, by the way, that proof of work is seen to be something that, you need 51% of all the computing power to upend the system. So let's just go off the 91 or 90-something terawatts. You're going to have computing equipment coordinated of over 45 or 50 terawatts just to upend the system. How the hell are you going to coordinate that? So it's seen as really stable. Ethereum is going from proof of work to proof of stake because they want to be greener. This uses a ton of energy, proof of work. Proof of stake, you just need, a lot less. You need several, relatively speaking, rather than the whole big proof of work. But again, Bitcoin itself, the utility of it in the money is one thing, and it is gobbling up electricity. I don't know how to think of these numbers exactly. It says USA's got, in effect, 35% of all the energy in Bitcoin in the US, but from 4.1 to 35, you also had China exit. One of the big reasons was China didn't want to see their own money escape the country. They'd like to keep them, kind of sheltered there. So they totally got rid of it. And if you're looking at some Bitcoin mining equipment, you see a lot of it's coming over from Hong Kong. and making it go to where it can work. Kazakhstan, that surprised me. I just wouldn't have thought of it. But hey, check it out. So there's a lot of it there. So you have proof of work. A lot of energy goes into it. It appears to be a very, very stable system as far as data and security goes. There was another thing I was going to put up here. Like if you Google to see like how many times Bitcoin has been attacked or tried to be hobbled, there's all these instances that failed. And so nothing's been successful yet, and as the thing gets bigger, I think it would just be even harder. But with the stability of that blockchain underneath it, you've got Bitcoin, the currency, and then you've got information today, but what about value tomorrow? You're going to attach personal information, banking information, insurance, proprietary knowledge really is going to attach itself to that Bitcoin. So now you've got a way to link in even a more secure network where the foundation is for all intents unhackable. And so now you don't merely have Bitcoin the money, you now have Bitcoin as a new electric world. Kind of creepy. So let's take just a quick work of the world. Okay, we're going to relax from Bitcoin here for a second, and I'm nearly done. Thanks for most of you staying. Natural gas demand. So we looked at the very first slide, and we saw natural gas for electricity consumption in the U.S. coming down. We see renewables coming up. But who are we? I mean, yeah, we're the U.S. I mean, yeah, of course. We are, in some regards, pretty pompous. We try to drive the world. We're magnanimous in other ways. We try to be green, try to basically do the right thing, we think. But there's a lot of other countries out there that they're not in the same spot the U.S. is. They don't have they don't have the best system of government, and so it's really harder for them to do things. So just in the U.S., we can see our little lull there. Some of you guys were not doing your job right around here. But it's come back up, right? Natural gas production's come back up. We relaxed a little bit, and then here we come. This is just at the end of 2021. You see rig count going back up again. Pipeliners, hope I'm back in your good graces. You're going to get busier. So there's going to be a lot more connections to be made, and then a lot more opportunity out there. I don't think that people are just going to stay put. A lot of these guys, hey, we like our free cash flow. We're not going to get any busier. Wait, oil's at 90? Gas is at 5? Yeah, all right, we're going to do a little bit. And it's their boards behind them too, like, yeah, we better do something, right? Back in 2020, the IEA did a forecast, and well, actually it was 2018, then revisited, and of course they revised 2020 way down because none of us were at work. We're all sitting at home looking at cat videos, and then. So you can see what they did before, and you can see the same shape of the curve. It's not coming back up, and I don't know why. I don't know if things got more efficient or we got greener in that. I don't know why. But again, that reaches out to 2025, and that's a forecast. But I do know this. I do know I've been to China, and China really hasn't changed with the air you breathe in many places. The smog is considerable, and China is not the only country. It has so many, just the health ugliness of breathing that junk in is so bad. They need a different way. LNG terminals are on the upswing. They're forecasted. We're going to be exporting more LNG, more pipeliner stuff there. And then virtual pipelines. You're looking at Europe kind of doing like, hey, we're going to be carbon free by whatever 2035 or whatever, and so like, all right, well, why is Nord Stream 2 pipeline a thing? But everybody is posturing, but we know what the rest of the world needs, and the rest of the world needs that bridge fuel. They need something that can get to them that maybe they don't have right there, that can help their infrastructure and help their economies and help their societies and help their growth. Something that the U.S. does really well is we create opportunities. And creating opportunities within the contiguous states or 50 states, has helped, all boats rise with the tide. If you could do that with the rest of the world, You know, I think it's that there too, and gas can be the driver. I just thought of that on the spot, and it sounds good to me. But it's honestly, you know, something we believe in. So, you know, we've had gas prices do this. 2008, you know, shot up to $12, and those were good times. You know, it came crashing down. And I think that was really because we went from a demand center to a supply center, and now we've got so much darn supply. It's not only that, but we're a country who can move it, right? So now it can go everywhere. I would think the world should be very happy with that. I think air should be better for folks. And with that, I'll just close with a nice little smiley face. And thank you for giving me some of your dessert time here.
We got some time for questions. So yeah, go ahead.
Told you I'd take all of it.
So this is not a judgment. This is not a judgment on you. It's more a judgment on me. But when it comes to this crypto stuff, anybody can relate to me. I feel stupider now than I did 30 minutes ago.
Good, that wasn't a question, it was a statement.
No, totally on me.
Good work.
It worked.
So you and I know we've talked about on the ESG side of the presentation with electrification of drilling operations and whatnot.
Yep.
We've developed some machinery for that. It's freaking expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the payback? How do you justify the expense of doing that? Or can these drillers justify or the operators justify the expense of just dumping what they have versus going to new stuff? And is there a play to just retrofit these massive fleets of engine units to electric instead of starting all over?
Yeah. A couple of different portions to that question all lead to the same place. Look at electric frac. So electric frac was really the first thing, the big name item to come out there. And you're going to take a lot of diesel equipment, and you're in fact going to retire it. And you're not just going to spend kind of cheap money on a diesel fleet. You are going to spend $42 million to $60 million on constructing an electric frac fleet. And not only that, now you got to run the thing, and you have to make sure it runs in all these different scenarios. So at first, adoption, expensive. It is not the cost, it is not the no-brainer cost reducer, oh, that's just cheaper. To me, engineers, and they should think like this, they need to say like, is this a good use of dollars? And what is immediately not evident is how it can proliferate. The first part is a big pill to swallow. So whenever we're talking about certain equipment, Chuck and I are working on some fluid pumps. We're working on some compression, air compression. The first ones are expensive, and they're a bit cost prohibitive up front, but what you end up doing is you change the way people do business at the wellhead. And so let's talk drilling. You take one thing and you electrify it, you now have a basis to electrify other things. So going back to the frac example, you have an electric frac fleet that comes out, it's a little bit smaller, you have a smaller head count, you've got more technical support. You juxtapose that to a diesel fleet. If you guys have been on a frac location as of late that has a true diesel fleet on it, the horsepower necessary, it's up to the design, but let's say it's 16 pump trucks, 16 frac pumps. People are bringing out 20 and 24. It's because these things end up going down, and so you have to introduce a pseudo-reliability into the equation. The equipment itself isn't reliable, but you are going to cover with snow all the sins, and you're going to make sure that these things are all running so that one goes down, you're going to bring two others up and kind of cover for it until one of those goes down. You're like, bring up the other guy. Is it the end of the stage yet? Let's go, let's go, let's go. I used to work for Schlumberger back in the day. And things really haven't changed. There's so many moving parts. Things break, and you have a job that's happening in an hour. You've got to get it fixed, and sometimes you just can't, so you need all that. So initially, it is a big cost to swallow. But once you have, there is no argument that an electric motor lasts eons longer than a diesel engine. You don't have the transmission. You don't have all the maintenance out there. Your maintenance overhead with what it requires and the stock that you have to keep and all of that ends up showing up. Day one price? No. And that's the challenge for me especially, is how do you communicate those savings and how do you communicate what can happen? You know, and it's taken a long time. A lot of conversations, I'll say, and I'll bet you guys, like, this is a breath of fresh air. I enjoy seeing every single one of you. If I could just meet a person for coffee, like, it's a freaking trophy, you know, in my case. It seems it's so easy between doing nothing and doing something. I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, things are working okay today. I'm just gonna ignore this, you know, data I asked for and not get back to you. So it makes it a bit harder to communicate that that information, but I think you have all the rest of industry to show you that, yeah, there was a way of doing stuff until we electrified and we automated. And now it made us competitive and cost competitive as well, not just revenue competitive, but cost competitive. And now we can do so much more with what we have. Was that a long way to answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, these are interesting times. I worked for Williams, and we were flooding the bond with Deutsche Bank. And we had all these guys from an investment company I'm not going to mention, but they were civil engineers, and I said, well, what about the pig company, you know, countries? And they're like, countries, who are they? I said, you're forgetting the geopolitics of this whole thing. And we have that going on right now with Russia and Ukraine. I'm part Ukrainian, so I pay attention to that. But the geopolitics of this whole thing, you know, you talk about the use of gas. I think this whole thing really hinges on what's going on in Europe. We're going to be selling a lot more gas to Europe.
Absolutely.
Because of this whole thing. And I think, you know, whether or not the administration wants to face it, I think we have to save the world.
Yeah.
I think we have to, and it's going to force their hand to really open up the coffers in Appalachia. And that's what's going to happen. And, you know, I think that's the crystal ball right there.
Yeah, I mean, you see all the LNG export terminals, I mean, still gearing up. They're not slowing down, you know, and you know that they're backed by contracts. They don't build something that big just on a whim. And, you know, some of the LNG could make it over over to Asia as well. But yeah, but the quickest route is 6-8 days across the water over to Netherlands, to TTF or the National Balancing Point in the UK. And yeah, absolutely.
Because he's used it as a political muscle before Putin to, you know, shut down pipelines to Ukraine and freeze out the people, and also to Europe.
Yep.
If we can use what we have here against him, you know, it's a win-win for us.
When I was in my marketing job, I just thought of this. I had a phone call come in from DC, and I wasn't going to answer it because usually it's an extended warranty phone call. And I was sitting at my desk at Range, and this guy gets on, and he's got an interesting accent, and he is from Latvia. And he's like, hey, my name is Simon, something, and said, I'm in DC. I see that you are giving a talk. I think I was talking to Marcellus Midstream. There was a Marcellus Midstream that was in January that year. And he goes, I'm going to put a guy in a vehicle, and he's going to drive from, you're speaking tomorrow? I'm like, yeah. He goes, all right. Well, how long of a drive is that? I'm like, depends on how fast you go, but, you know, easily drivable within a part of a day. All right, I'm going to put this guy in a car. He's going to come find you, and you're going to tell him how we can get natural gas into my country. And I'm like, okay. Do you have a regas terminal? I don't know what that is, but you're going to tell him, and he's going to take notes. And so I had a meeting with somebody, and it was the shortest, like, can we get gas? Let's gas. Okay, can we? Yep, we can do that. Yep. Thank you very much. I'm going to go report back. I'm like, you drove 7 hours. Thank you for shaking my hand. And I didn't hear from them because he's like, okay, we need a terminal. We got to go do this thing. And his whole deal, though, was Russia. That's the reason for the phone call, was calling me and saying, how do we get gas? We're so afraid we're going to be squeezed out by east of us. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of to piggyback on what Chuck brought up about the initial investment and ROI, something that, like, I've been piecing together with the ESG world is also the Wall Street piece of it. So although maybe do the engineering and business analysis, maybe it doesn't really make sense. But big picture, for the large publicly traded companies to pull in those institutional investors who have dumped fossil fuels, do you see this as a way of this, I'll air quote, cleaning up our act to pull in, like, I don't know, like the New York police officers retirement fund, or the Connecticut teachers retirement fund. So we're out if it's fossil fuels. Now this gives the investor liaison people something to go talk to these large institutional investors and the big block of money that they represent.
Yeah, absolutely. And even that COO I was talking about said exactly what you're saying. And it was because, like, everybody knows that petroleum and petroleum products have a place in this world. They're not going away overnight. They're necessary. Other than, you get the people who just ignore reality and like, hey, we're just gonna, the whole cow fart thing.
Yeah, we're gonna wear hemp clothes.
Yeah. But they know it's here and they know they need stabilization. So you see what people say on Twitter, and then when you get off Twitter, you realize that most people aren't talking about that, which is kind of nice. I kind of like reality. And so, yeah, you do have these people who are like, look, they look at it, okay, this is still an investment. We still see growth. We need natural gas and the products for plastics, ethane. Most of everything you see that's plastic has been made from ethane, some propane, or derivatives thereof, butadiene, the pi gases, all that stuff. So it still had, utilization. So not only cleaning up air, but natural gas, methane's used for fertilizer. There's a big transformation that happens there for the good, to green the planet. So you still do have some of those people coming into it. It's not all, black tar and oily birds floating in the waters type of thing. Yeah.
I've had that discussion about the fertilizer with people because our agriculture has become like, corn is in everything, and corn is also a crop. Like I remember learning this as a middle school or whatever, that corn gives nothing back to the ground, but it takes everything out.
Oh, that jerk corn, it's so delicious.
Fossil fuel, natural gas-based fertilizer, the corn, all the corn and the soy that the people concerned about cow farts all have to go away if you get rid of fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned something right there. That's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. There's a company over in Europe called Yara, and Yara owns a shared terminal up in the Nordic countries there with Ineos. Ineos was the company that first bought ethane from the U.S., and so they shared that, and they were very interested in it because LNG kind of wasn't happening yet, but ethane was about to, and they could still make fertilizer from ethane. And for them, they're like, we need the smallest molecule possible. And so that was going to be the next step. So I'm interested to look back and see what they've decided as far as how they're going to grow.
Probably got time for one more question, I think. We'll give Chuck a second question.
No, just an observation that backed up what you were talking in the experience of electrification with removing people away from. And this is a real world experience I had within the last few months of working with an engine supplier for a water resource project, and I told the guy, well, I need to be able to control the speed. And he sends me a picture of a knob, right? And I said, no, I need to be able to control it remotely. And he sends me a picture of a cable.
One of those squeezy things.
It was like, I said, no, I'm talking about 500 miles away. And he's like, huh? But you talk to the VFD guys, and you stick whatever communication card inside a VFD, you can do anything you want anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And just totally different mindset in terms of being able to achieve
The
that.
problem is you didn't call me about that.
Well, that might be true.
Yeah. Remote operations where you had people before you now have support in the office. They could be in an air-conditioned palace for all you know.
Right.
But they're definitely, aside from accidentally stapling their fingers together, that's it. So they're out of that harm's way. A few years ago, there's a very regrettable story. There's a snubber in the area that had a death. There was a fellow who shouldn't have been where he was. There were hydraulics that were released. He died. He got crushed right there and killed instantly. And some measure of automation would never have him there. Never have him there. And if we think that every life is precious, then you talk about value that you can't see right up, But when that happens, what kind of cost is that? And what kind of ridiculous cost is that? So you go back to, is it a worthwhile investment? I think you have to take some of that stuff. Again, if these companies, safety for people is their number one priority, it's got inherent value.
Thank you. Good stuff.
Okay.
Thanks. Anybody want a Bitcoin?
Yeah, so we do have the box of coins up here. Feel free to mingle, come up, chat.